welcome to Arirang News, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Hwang Sung-hee, filling in for Laah Hyun-kyung. We begin with the latest from the carnage in Paris that has left the world in shock. An intensive manhunt is underway for the perpetrators of the terror attack that left 12 people dead at the Paris office of the French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo. Now for details, we connect live to Kim Min-ji at the news center. Min-ji, French authorities have identified the shooters, and I hear one of them has turned himself in.
That's right, Sung-hee. AFP reports that the youngest of the three suspects, an 18-year-old identified as Hamyd Mourad, has surrendered to police. Now, this comes as authorities carry out large police operations to locate the remaining two. Police have released photos of the suspects still at large, brothers Saeed and Sharif Kauchi, both of whom are in their 30s. Arrest warrants have been issued for them, and police say they are likely armed and dangerous. Sharif is also believed to have a long criminal record. Media reports say he was a militant sentenced to 3 years in prison on terror charges back in 2008 for helping to funnel jihadist fighters to Iraq. President Francois Hollande has denounced the shootings as a terror attack and set Thursday as a day of mourning.
They left their mark on generations and generations of French, through their influence, through their insolence, through their rare independence. Here, I want to say to them, we will continue to defend it, this message of freedom, in their name.
And the French government has stepped up security across the nation in the wake of the attack. Let's go over the details of the shooting itself.
Sure. It took place around noon on Wednesday when heavily armed gunmen stormed an editorial meeting at the Paris office of Charlie Hebdo and opened fire. The attack seemed very organized, the shooters reportedly calling out the victims by name before executing them. Just minutes later, the gunmen were seen calmly leaving the building to get into a waiting black car, then abandoning it and hijacking a second one. Altogether, 12 are dead, and that includes the editor as well as prominent cartoonists and 2 police officers. Now, a bit about the magazine. It's no stranger to courting controversy. Its most recent tweet on Twitter mocked the leader of the Islamic State, and the office had been under tight security, especially after its offices were firebombed in 2011. And that was after it released a cover featuring a caricature of the Prophet Muhammad, which is considered blasphemy.
And Min-ji, we've seen an outpouring of support for France in its time of need.
Yeah, that's right. People in Paris held a silent vigil and lit candles at a makeshift shrine close to the offices of Charlie Hebdo and at other locations around the globe. World leaders were also quick to condemn the attack. Take a listen.
This horrific attack is meant to divide. We must not fall into that trap. This is a moment for solidarity. Around the world, we must stand strong for freedom of expression and tolerance and stand against the forces of division and hate.
The most important thing I want to say is that our thoughts and prayers are with the families of those who've been lost in France and with the people of Paris and the people of France. Those who carry out senseless attacks against innocent civilians, ultimately they'll be forgotten. And we will stand with the people of France through this very, very difficult time.
Messages of mourning and outrage over the attack are also spreading quickly on social media under the hashtag Je suis Charlie, which means I am Charlie.
Well, our hearts are also with the victims of the tragedy. That was Kim Min-ji reporting on the terror attack in Paris that has left at least 12 people dead. The South Korean parliament is a step closer to passing a resolution that urges Seoul and Pyongyang to mutually refrain from verbally attacking each other. The National Assembly's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee voted in favor of the resolution this Tuesday morning that calls for an end to slander between the two Koreas. It also urges the government to take action against South Korean civic groups that fly anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border if it harms inter-Korean relations. To this, Unification Minister Lee Gil-jae, who also attended the session, said the government would take necessary measures if the safety of people near the border region were threatened. The bill will go up for a full vote at the National Assembly on Monday. North Korea has called on the South Korean government to plainly state its stance on the flying of leaflets, its unification aims, and its joint military exercises with Washington. Pyongyang's state-run Korean Central News Agency says Seoul should be upfront with the North on all three issues. It also wants the South Korean government to lay out what kind of unification it wants, as the North is deeply opposed to the idea of the South absorbing the North. Without mentioning President Park Geun-hye by name, Pyongyang also denounced her for telling Seoul's Unification Preparatory Committee last month to bring about meaningful change from the North. The news agency also said North Korea is keeping a close eye on South Korea's next moves. The top man at the FBI says he's more confident than ever that North Korea was responsible for the hack attack on Sony Pictures. And adding to that, Washington's top intelligence chief warned Pyongyang could launch additional cyber attacks against the United States. Hwang Sung-hee has the story.
There's no doubt. The FBI seems more confident than ever that North Korea was behind the recent hacking of Sony Pictures. That's what James Comey, the bureau's director, said Wednesday during a speech at a cybersecurity conference in New York.
Right, why do I have such high confidence in this attribution to North Korea? Now, here's the tricky part. I want to show you as much as I can, the American people, about the why, and I want to show the bad guys as little as possible about the how.
But while stressing the Bureau has to preserve its methods and sources, he did give some explanation on why the FBI is certain. When the hackers sent emails, they would use proxy servers for disguise, but at times they got, quote, sloppy and were directly connected. That's when the FBI caught IP addresses only used by North Koreans. And on the same day at the same location, James Clapper, Washington's top intelligence chief, warned there's a high probability North Korea will launch more cyber attacks on the United States, calling the recent hacking the most serious attack of its kind against U.S. interests, resulting in huge financial losses. He added the cyber world is a powerful new realm for Pyongyang.
If they get global recognition at a low cost with no consequence, they will do it again and keep doing it again until we push back. And of course, others will follow suit.
Clapper went on to say that if nothing is done to punish North Korea, the regime will continue to lash out. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Senior officials from Korea and Japan are currently holding economic talks here in Seoul. The foreign ministry said the two sides will discuss ways to strengthen their economic cooperation to mark the 50th anniversary of the normalization of their diplomatic ties. Korea is expected to raise concerns about Japan's quantitative easing and the effects of the weak Japanese yen within global markets. On Japan's end, they are likely to ask that Korea resume imports of fishery goods, which were suspended in 2013 following the Fukushima nuclear disaster. The proposed trilateral free trade agreement between Korea, Japan, and China will also be on the agenda. Markets across the world are feeling the effects of the recent drop in oil prices. Here in Korea, the finance minister says the economy could end up seeing some benefits. But others are raising concerns of deflation, and financial firms at home and abroad have downgraded their inflation rate forecast for this year. Shin Se-min reports.
There are concerns that spiraling global oil prices could push Korea's annual inflation rate down to its lowest level in 16 years into the 0% range this year. Financial firms at home like Samsung Securities and the Korean Development Institute have downgraded their forecast to below 1%. Overseas, Credit Suisse lowered its projection from nearly 3% to 0.9%, citing sinking crude prices. If the rate does in fact fall into the 0% range, it would be the first time since 1999, right after the Asian financial crisis, when consumer price growth dipped to 0.8%. The nation's inflation rate has remained in the 1% range since November 2012. The slide in oil prices has some going so far as to raise the prospects of deflation in Korea, given the low inflation rate and slowing domestic demand. However, Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan dismissed those concerns on Wednesday. Instead, he said they could end up benefiting Korea as the lower import prices of oil would help the country boost domestic demand. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And sliding oil prices have pushed down international raw material prices as well to a nearly 6-year low. The Commodity Research Bureau Index, which compiles data of 21 staple commodities including grain, crude, and metal, hit 225.38 points on Tuesday. Now that's the lowest it's been since April 2009. Compared to the first half of last year, West Texas Intermediate crude has dropped 55% in value, gold 8%, and copper 12%. Analysts forecast prices to remain low or drop even further, at least through the first half of this year, citing the oversupply of international crude and economic uncertainties in major economies around the globe. The eurozone has officially entered deflation. Consumer prices lost ground to close out 2014 on the back of sliding oil prices, forcing the economic bloc's central bank to make plans for stimulus measures. Song Ji-san reports.
Inflation in eurozone is now growing at a negative rate, otherwise known as deflation. Consumer prices shrank 0.2% in the last month of 2014 from a year earlier, even lower than the market forecast of a 0.1% drop. It is the first negative reading seen since the 2009 financial crisis and comes mostly due to the falling oil prices, which have been slashed in half since June 2014. The price of Brent crude dipped below $50 per barrel earlier this week for the first time in 5.5 years.
Deflation is the worst that can happen. Deflation means consumers no longer consume, hoping that tomorrow products will be cheaper.
The latest figure, far below target inflation of just under 2%, is pressing the European Central Bank to take action, likely in the form of quantitative easing.
The ECB will start to buy sovereign bonds in the first quarter and hoping for a positive market reaction, which could also trigger some more optimism, some more investments.
Other indicators are just as gloomy with the weakening euro currency. Unemployment in Italy has a record high of over 13%, and the inflation rate in Germany is also expected to dip below zero. The ECB will meet on January 22nd, 3 days before a snap election in Greece. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's Samsung Electronics says it will likely post fourth quarter profits that beat analysts' estimates thanks to strong demand for memory chips. The smartphone and memory chip maker's likely profit was still down 37% compared to last year, confirming Samsung's first annual profit fall in 3 years. Kim Young-gil has more.
In a guidance released on Thursday, Samsung Electronics said its operating profit would likely be $4.7 billion in the October to December period of 2014, beating expectations. However, profits are down almost 37.5% from a year earlier, confirming its first annual profit decline since 2011. But the fourth quarter figure still marks a rebound from the company's third quarter profits of $3.6 billion, which was Samsung's lowest quarterly profit in more than 3 years. Fourth quarter sales likely fell more than 12% on year at some $47 billion, but that's up $4.5 billion from the previous quarter. Market analysts say increased demand for memory chips helped limit the impact of shrinking smartphone profits as Samsung's Galaxy line struggles to compete with Apple's iPhone and cheaper Chinese rivals. Analysts presume Samsung's semiconductor division performed better than the cash cow mobile business from October to December period of last year, helped by a rise in demand for memory chips that go into personal computers and smartphones. The mobile division's fourth quarter profits improved slightly from the previous quarter due to pickup in sales of premium smartphones like the Galaxy Note 4 and efforts to lower marketing costs. Samsung did not provide a breakdown of its divisional profits as the final earning figures are due to be released later this month. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Staying with Samsung Electronics is grabbing the world's attention at the ongoing Consumer Electronics Show with its Internet of Things technologies. According to US-based magazine Bloomberg Businessweek, Samsung's pledge to connect most of its products to the web within 2 years is one of the most important things to watch at the Las Vegas event. The report says the campaign fits Samsung well, as it already makes sophisticated electronic devices and household appliances on a global scale. However, the magazine added that it may take Samsung longer than the envisioned 2 years for the plan to become reality and for consumers to embrace internet-enabled home appliances. Korea and Colombia agreed on a free trade deal nearly 2 years ago, but the pact has yet to be ratified in Colombia due mostly to the country's auto industry opposing to the deal. Colombia's foreign minister was in Seoul this week to assure officials here that the deal will be finalized soon. Connie Kim has more.
Korea will soon have greater access to Colombia, the third largest Latin American market, and its population of 48 million. Wrapping up her 2-day visit to Seoul on Wednesday, Colombian Foreign Minister Maria Angela Olguin met with Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and pledged to speed up ratification of the Korea-Colombia FTA that was signed nearly 2 years ago.
I am happy to say that our Congress approved the trade pact. Once the deal is reviewed by the Constitutional Court, the free trade agreement could be ratified in the coming months.
The holdup is mostly on the Colombian side amid concerns among the auto industry there, as a tariff on Korean automobiles will be lifted over a 10-year period. Although the current rate stands at 35%, there is still strong demand for Korean automobiles in Colombia. Of total bilateral trade in 2013, exports of Korean cars and auto parts to Colombia made up more than 80%. Olguin said the concerns within Colombia are manageable, considering that Korean automobiles that come into the country via the US or Mexico come in tariff-free.
Given this situation, I believe the problem related to the auto industry's backlash can be solved.
She added that subsidiaries would be given out to the auto sector to ease concerns. Now, when the bilateral trade pact goes into effect, the Korean market will have cheaper access to Colombia's most popular export items, such as coffee, coal, and metals. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
With fears that the latest outbreak of foot and mouth disease might spread further, Korea has stepped up efforts to contain it. In fact, the latest data shows that the government has spent billions of dollars to deal with contagious livestock disease over the past 4 years alone. Our Lee Ji-yoon tells us more.
$2.7 billion. That's how much the Korean government has spent over the last 4 years to deal with livestock diseases. According to the Agriculture Ministry on Thursday, the government spent more than $2.5 billion between 2010 and 2011. This is when the country had to slaughter over 3 million animals in the nation's largest outbreak of foot and mouth disease. On top of that, $75 million went toward dealing with avian influenza, where over 6 million chickens and ducks were culled. The money covered the costs of slaughtering the animals, sterilizing infected farms, and compensating farmers. In the latest outbreak of foot and mouth disease that started last month, over 28,000 pigs have been slaughtered so far, already incurring a loss of some $9 million. But the government is hoping to save some of the cost this time. Instead of slaughtering all animals at infected farms, the government's policy now is to selectively slaughter only the ones showing symptoms of infection. Along with strengthened quarantine measures, the government is considering penalizing farmers that don't vaccinate their livestock. Experts also say that the government should set aside a bigger budget for animal vaccination and quarantine to keep diseases from breaking out in the first place. Despite the efforts, though, the Agriculture Ministry confirmed another case of the disease in Sejong City on Thursday. The ministry said authorities have culled 226 pigs at the farm. Lee Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
It's a big accomplishment when artists have their work shown in major museums, and the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art aims to extend that opportunity to all artists through the Young Korean Artists Program. Our Im Yoon-hee has a look at some of the top young artists of 2015.
Silently, a cloud of reaching hands, shivering in the wind. A peek into a land of fantasy and wonder. But what are these hands reaching for? And where is this water going? A huge pile of what appears to be rubbish, overrun by flowing water. A seemingly wasteful cycle. A handful of the most talented up-and-coming young Korean artists illustrate their views and comments on the problems of our society.
The Young Korean Artists Program was started in 1982 at MMCA, and this time, for the 18th edition, we've chosen 8 different artists over 40 different works of various styles. Previous artists took more direct approaches to their works, but these artists took an oblique approach that resulted in dark, fairy tale-like experience.
And through this dark fairy tale theme, these artists convey their message. Such as young artist No Sang-ho, whose Martian wagon looks like it came right from the circus. The dozens of plaster drawings tell the stories of individuals, people encountered by the artist himself.
I took this piece to the streets and told my story to the people. Then I would listen to their stories as well as their feedback to my story. After that, it would be my turn again, and I would write my story once more. This process is what led to my next project.
This time, artist No creates a visually limited experience, causing a heightened response to each image and drawing that does get caught by the spotlight. Images from the circus with a shroud of eerie gloom. They hang next to drawings of people, stories of individuals, who all, coincidentally, are visually impaired, hindered either by opaque glasses or by a complete lack of eyes altogether.
This piece is about a town full of blind people, and that's exactly what you'll experience as well. You can't see every part of the piece, just what your flashlight allows. Because people cannot see the entire meaning of the work, it requires them to use their imagination to connect the drawings and ultimately connect the dots. Through this project, you can enter and exit a whole different world.
And other artists turn to different senses, some more pungent than others. A revolting stench that overrides all other senses, except the sense of urgency. They're abstract works of art that contain images of life and death, things we encounter in our everyday lives, ideas and thoughts that are up for interpretation, that will hopefully, someday, lead to a better tomorrow. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. The cold spell continues here in Korea, and currently a cold wave advisory is in effect in some regions of Gyeongsangbuk-do, Chungcheongbuk-do, and Gangwon-do provinces, especially in the mountainous regions. However, a dry weather advisory continues along with this frigid cold weather in the east side of the peninsula, so make sure to take extra caution when starting any fires. Now, it's less windy today with our daytime highs to be above freezing, higher than yesterday, but still above about 2 degrees lower compared to the seasonal average. Now, we can expect clear skies across the nation today, and it looks to stay that way until tomorrow when clouds are looking to move in. And now taking a look at our readings for today, Seoul will be lingering around 0 degrees this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan will reach higher at 5 and 7 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju-Hwanin gets up to 8, Dokdo hits down to 4 degrees, while Mangungang reaches to -5 with sunny skies. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
And that does it for this edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching.